Before we dive into the mechanics of this empire, we need to go back centuries. Money, as we understand it, is only a few hundred years old in its modern form. Before coins and paper, trade was direct, goods for goods. But as societies grew, the need for a universally accepted medium of exchange emerged. Enter debt. Debt wasn't just a personal obligation. It became a tool for controlling societies. Early records from Mesopotamia show kings issuing debt forgiveness edicts, which may sound generous, but were actually a way to reset the system while keeping citizens dependent. Fast forward to the 17th century, the invention of central banking. A few families whose names echo through history figured out a secret that would change the world. If you control the issuance of money, you control the destiny of nations. England, France, and later the United States became laboratories for this system. And yet the full implications were invisible to the public. People didn't know that every loan, every bond, every stimulus quietly expanded an empire of debt that would reach every corner of the globe. The story begins with a simple idea. Money is not wealth, it is power. In the late 1600s, the Bank of England was established, its stated purpose, to lend money to the government during wars and national crises. But here's the twist. The bank didn't have actual gold to back the loans. Instead, it created money from nothing debt, disguised as currency. The government borrowed, citizens paid taxes to service the debt, and the bank earned interest on money that had never existed. It sounds unbelievable, but this was the blueprint. Other nations copied the system, and a quiet but powerful empire of debt began to spread. Key figures like the Rothschilds in Europe and later, Wall Street financiers in America were not just bankers, they were architects of a system where the more a nation borrowed, the more the creditors prospered. Every new loan, every new bond, every new war debt added a layer to a hidden structure a few would ever see. By the 19th and 20th centuries, this empire had grown exponentially. Nations industrialized, fought wars, and expanded colonies, but each move required funding. Who financed the expansion? Private banks operating behind government walls? Here's the shocking part. These loans weren't neutral. Every economic decision, every fiscal policy, every interest rate was designed to make nations dependent. The more debt you accumulated, the less freedom you had. Governments technically ruled, but in reality, they were caught in a web spun by the invisible architects of credit. The 20th century introduced new tools, the Federal Reserve in the US, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. These institutions presented themselves as public benefactors, lenders of last resort. Stabilizers of the economy, but they operated on the same principle: debt as a tool of control. Each time a country experienced a crisis, hyperinflation, war, or recession, the solution was always debt. Borrow more, pay interest, and stay inside the invisible cage. The empire didn't conquer with armies. It conquered with ledgers, bonds, and central bank mandates. The system seemed invincible until reality started pushing back. By the late 20th century, global debt reached astronomical levels. Individual countries, Japan, the United States, much of Europe, were spending more to service debt than to fund public projects. But here's the twist few understand. Debt never truly gets paid off. Every repayment is offset by new borrowing, creating an endless cycle. And when the cycle falters, the fallout is catastrophic. Take 2008 as an example. The global financial crisis was not just a banking problem, it was a symptom of a much deeper illness. Mortgages, derivatives, and national debts were all connected in a web that, once stressed, nearly collapsed the world economy. Governments bailed out banks, not citizens. The hidden debt empire survived while ordinary people bore the brunt. The aftermath of crises always follows a predictable pattern. Economies are propped up with more loans, interest rates are manipulated, and new financial products are created, all designed to keep the cycle alive. Meanwhile, citizens unknowingly finance their own subjugation. Taxes, bonds, and even pensions are tied to the same system. Wealth becomes concentrated in fewer hands. Sovereignty erodes as nations borrow more from the global system than they can ever repay. And yet this fallout is rarely connected to the root cause. Public discourse focuses on bad policies or greedy bankers, but few. See the empire itself, the hidden infrastructure of debt that persists beyond any single crisis. Over the decades, governments have attempted fixes, stimulus packages, austerity measures, debt forgiveness programs. But every attempt addresses symptoms, never the system itself. Why? Because the hidden debt empire thrives on the existence of debt itself. Remove debt and the power structure collapses. That's why solutions are always temporary, always partial, and always leave the underlying system intact. Even the modern financial innovations, cryptocurrencies, digital banks, alternative currencies often end up feeding the same cycle in new forms. The pattern repeats, and the architects of the empire watch from the shadows, their control largely unchallenged. Today, global debt exceeds $300 trillion. It's more than 3 times the world's entire annual economic output. Every country, from the largest economies to the smallest, depends on borrowing to survive. Student loans, national deficits, credit cards, mortgages all are cogs in the same machine. And while interest rates fluctuate and markets rise and fall, the underlying system remains unchanged. Debt as a tool of power, not just a financial instrument. Even more alarming, patterns from history repeat with chilling precision. Crises always lead to more debt. Bailouts enrich creditors, ordinary citizens shoulder the burden. Each cycle leaves the global economy more fragile, more concentrated, and more dependent on an invisible empire that few dare to question. Debt is power disguised as currency. Understanding this is the first step toward seeing how nations are controlled from the inside out. Cycles of borrowing are intentional, not accidental. Every crisis, every bailout, every stimulus keeps the system alive and hidden. Modern financial fixes rarely fix anything. They prolong the system, protect the architects, and ensure the cycle continues. The question isn't whether debt controls our nations, it already does. The real question is, how long can the global system survive before the next breaking point? And will we recognize it when it comes? If you want to understand the forces shaping our world and how the hidden debt empire touches your life, you need to stay informed. Watch, read, and question the financial systems that govern you. Share this video to open others' eyes, and join the conversation before the next cycle begins. Because understanding is the first step toward true freedom. And the hidden empire only thrives in ignorance.